Hello everyone, Reverend619 here, and welcome to the Kibellah build video. Normally I show off a little bit of late game, but I'm actually going to show off some tricks in early game to just basically address the whole issue that people are saying that Blade Dancer has been nerfed out of the metagame. Now, I know I've done enough videos on Blade Dancer and Executioner that people that follow my channel are very aware that no 1.5 did not make Blade Dancer or Executioner unplayable. However, people that are searching up this guide might still be under that impression, so they're looking for ways to play Kibellah. So that's what I'm going to do. Basically, with the changes to Blade Dancer, you just got to remember that now Death from Above has a 10% dodge cost, not really a 10% dodge nerf. What this means is you need to build more into parry and rely less on just stacking dodge from your buffers, though that will still be very good. However, you throw something like the Sororitas boots on Cassia, which is something that I didn't talk about in the Cassia video because it's one of what I consider a more cheesy strategy, but it is on the spreadsheet for options that you can give her boots. But basically, you kill 5 enemies, you can then turn one finest hour, so you don't have to wait until you've got to the end of Act 2 to get the Signet Ring of the Inquisition. And then you can just one-turn every encounter. This strategy is viable from as soon as you get to Footfall in Act 2. The Sororitas boots are normally very good on either Kibellah to get her Death Waltz very quickly, or to like Ablard or Heinrich to obviously get their Daring Breach very quickly, or even Argenta so she can get Firearms Mastery. But the thing is, the most versatile user of it is always going to be Cassia, because Cassia with it, like I said, she can use it to just absolutely generate any companion in the game by giving them a finest hour. And you get, like, I think it's about 18, maybe slightly less stims, and you can use those stims during your finest hour turn, 0 AP, that gives you just 4 more AP, which gives you more attacks. The hidden cap on Finest Hour is actually 12 attack actions. So whilst it says it removes the attack action cap, now what it does is it allows you to make 12 attacks. So that seems to be the hard cap of extra attacks that you can make, but that limit does not apply obviously to Death from Above, so you can very easily build that up. And as you can see here, I am abusing every aspect of the Blade Dancer to show off all this damage and all the ways to stack it. Like, a lot of enemies got new resistances, so they, especially bosses now, can resist dots coming in from Executioner, so it's not as easy to one-shot them, but through the incredibly insane high attack economy of Blade Dancer, you can just keep going and going and going and going until they're dead. You just don't worry about it, friend. As you can see here, I am using Kibellah to one-turn my way through this entire encounter, and this is DLC1 for Void Shadows, and yes, I'm always playing on unfair. It's the only difficulty I play on. Some of you might be mistaken to be thinking I'm on normal or daring, but no, this is still unfair. It's just my builds are that strong. With that said, there's only a few more enemies left in this encounter. Obviously, normal kills can generate Death from Above. You can give Kibellah stuff boots like the Inertia boots to build up some incredible MP, or like I said, the Sororitas boots, and later on you can even try some other things like the Fencing boots or even Enforcer's Light boots. But one of the things that are going to be most important to alleviating her issues in dodge is in the Tier 1 Blade Dancer. You're going to want to pick up either Acrobatic Artistry or Veil of Blades. By doing so, you will pretty much be immune to the issues that you'll be seeing with reduced dodge. Or, as you can see here, I'm using Invigorating Resolve. I've got so much temp HP, it's not going to matter. But I'm Reverend619, and we're about to get into the build video. So let's talk about what changed to 1.5 when it comes to Blade Dancers and Executioners. Now, every time you break the game's attack economy and get attacks that are beyond what any other archetype could ever hope to dream of, you take a stacking 10% penalty to dodge, whilst taking a small 2 debuff to strength and a 2 debuff to perception. As you can stack agility really high, you're not really going to miss the perception too much unless it is very specific late game enemies, and that's mostly because you can use half agility in melee to dodge reduction anyway, and because we're going to be leveling perception, we're not really going to notice it. As for strength, with the 1.5 patch, Drukhari weapons can now use dexterity for damage instead of strength, so again, you won't notice that. So let's talk about what I'm actually doing. So I've changed a lot of my build theory for some of my builds to not be as reliant for melee on Iron Eye grenades and leave that to range, whilst melee focuses on Destroyer because the combination of Destroyer and Degrade Defense can easily 10 times your damage output. It is such an insanely powerful combination that it's one of those things that I used to do in 1.3. I moved away from it for 1.4, and then I went straight back to it for 1.5, because why not min-max? Why not indeed? The trick with getting the most out of Executioner is stacking high attacks with Blade Dancer, and then on top of that stacking Armor Strip. So this can be achieved through Metal Claw Gloves, it can be achieved through Destroyer, as previously said, it can be achieved through Captive Ordnance with Grand Performance, as well as Death Waltz. And the two reasons we do this is Carmine Crown. Whenever we inflict dots, it will also armor strip, and then we'll get critical hit chance. And then with both of those combined, Fragile Playthings and Rack and Weakness will allow us to do damage into the thousands. And as you stack armor strip and then you stack dots, you will do some very obscene damage. To counteract the movement issues, we use stuff like Inertia Boots to build up the initial momentum, which you can also use the Sororitas Boots in Act 2 to make sure you always get that Death Waltz until you can fully set up Cassia to do that. And what you're really going to want to do is, before you get access to some of the later game items, you're going to combine that with Arm of Hidden Promise to really boost your agility, though you can change this to other arms later. You're going to want to stack Medicaid, which will do stuff like Diagnoser and the Mechanicus Respirator Mask, and then in Act 3 when you get the Carmine Crown. The end of Act 4 is when you get Void Point's Pride. You used to get this at the start of Act 4, so it was an incredibly powerful item that would allow you to resolve stack Medicaid to the thousands, but they moved DLC 1, Kibellah's questline, to the end of Act 4, so you won't see this till post level 50, so it's not, you can't really build your build around it. However, you do want to get Metal Claw Gloves early. You can use Swashbuckler's Cloak, or you can use Malpain Shroud. If you use Malpain Shroud, make sure you get Invigorating Resolve. The only reason that's not on here at the moment is Abelard currently has Invigorating Resolve and Malpain Shroud. I don't know why I left that on there. Going back over here, yes, because she's not got those items, I've put on the Anatomist Amulet so we can stack up some more dots, and obviously Swashbuckler's Coat will just give us 15% critical damage. Master of Torture is another key talent that we're going to use here. All-encompassing Agony isn't going to be as early an objective, but we will get into that. But with this update, we're also seeing some incredibly powerful new weapons. Some of the new Drukhari weapons we've coming in here is obviously the Blade of the Blood Hunter here, which can turn weapon skill to arm penetration, which is just obscene. The Act 5 enemies, which is, I won't spoil, but they're now immune to bleed and toxin, as they should be. So in the final act of the game, it's definitely much harder to use an Executioner, but still very possible by stacking up, obviously, Burning Dots from Dogmatic 2. Other weapons, Virulent Slice, you can find. You've obviously got the Djinn Blade of Ymira's if you're looking to just get some more raw damage in, and the same with the Insatiable Djinn Blade, which is now the paired sword that comes with it, so you can get both of these as you play through. Other items that we're going to see is the Imminent Torment, which is a very strong upgrade that you'll be seeing in Act 4, as well as Symphony of Pain, which is another Drukhari weapon coming into Act 4. And being able to stack agility with these means you're going to be doing crap ton of damage. Kibellah's origin is obviously part of the Death Cult Assassin. Now, it's a very, very interesting origin, which is obviously exclusive to her, but it's one of those ones where it's not as impactful, and I often forget to build into it, and I always remember as I'm in Exemplar ranks. So my build does not build around focusing on best utilizing this. So what this does is, whenever you have splashes of blood, which can be built up by her special grenade or her special gloves, it gives Blood Blessed and Blood Stained for 2 rounds. So the creature deals 2% more damage for each stack of Blood Blessed, which is pretty good, and Blood Stained, the creature suffers 2% more damage for each stack of Blood Stained. So obviously you're doing 4% of each stack if you have both of them. Additionally, for every 10 wounds Death Cult Assassin loses through the entirety of combat, the creature affected by Blood Blessed or Blood Stained gains 1 stack of the corresponding effect. So these can be built up really rapidly, but it's just one of those things where the mechanic, it's not really something you notice, and it's something you can put into the background. Now, if you want to build harder into these, the talents for them can be done quite well for that. So if I have a quick little look at them here, I'm not actually using them too early on in the build, but obviously, Crimson Tide, a creature with the Blood Blessed or Blood Stained effect gets +1 stack of this effect whenever Raining Blood is inflicted again, or when it starts to turn a blood-covered cell. So that'll be stuff like from her unique gloves that you get in DLC 1, Act 1, or obviously her grenade. Dance Blood, Death Cult, Assassin's allies deal 2+ agility bonus more damage to enemies if both the ally and the target stand in blood-covered cells. Transforms each time Death Cult Assassin parries, dodges, and attack all enemies with the Bloodstained effect get +1 stack of the effect. Open the Veins, a creature with the Bloodblessed or Bloodstained effect gains 1 stack of this every time a dot's inflicted on it, which is actually really good for the build that we're going with. And Withering Blood, a creature with the Bloodblessed or Bloodstained effect gain 1 stack of this effect each time it suffers from toxin, bleeding, burning, blah 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 blah. Now, the main issue that I have with this and why it's so slow is things die before this builds up. So, normally I just put the gloves on Kibellah, and Kibellah just naturally builds them up herself, so she's just building damage by killing anyone. So, normally from Act 1 to Act 4, she's just using those gloves that as she kills, she just builds up her damage that way, and it's never been too big that I've really noticed it, so I tend to eventually move to either the Augmented Gloves, the Inevitable Demise, or the Metal Claw Gloves. So let's actually have a look at the build and what's happening here. So at rank 1, the Blade Dance gets Blade Dance. Now this is an incredibly powerful, extra, open-ended, I have a free attack. So the Blade Dance makes 2+ agility bonus divided by 4 melee attacks against random targets, including allies, adjacent to the Blade Dancer, each dealing 50% of their normal damage. This is a melee burst. Oh, that's exactly what the next line said. I skipped ahead. The ability can only be used with a sword equipped. If 2 swords are equipped, the Blade Dance makes 1+ agility bonus divided by 4 attacks with each one. So yes, you can get some quite hefty attacks out here. Now I think dual wielding is better than single wielding because of dance partners. That means you can get your weapon skill much higher, but you can use this two-handed if you want. And you can have a set of two-handed and a set of one-handed. She naturally comes with Medicae. She then gets Death from Above, which is another absolutely game-breaking ability. Blade Dancer leaps into the air and lands on the selected cell. Upon landing, they deal a agility plus weapon skill bonus damage to all adjacent enemies. This leap can be made to any unoccupied cell within 3-cell radius that the Blade Dancer has line of sight. They can also use this to go straight up for verticality. This movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity. The Blade Dancer cannot jump to a cell that is inaccessible in combat. This ability can be used multiple times per turn, but each use requires a charge to be spent and inflicts +1 stack of Short of Breath. Short of Death Breath is the new requirement. Well, the cost, should I say. Each stack of this effect reduces strength and perception by 10%. No, it just takes off like 2. And it reduces dodge. It says 20%, but I was noticing 10%, but who knows, maybe they've upped this when I wasn't looking. But this, I believe, caps at 4 or 5 stacks anyway, so it's not that much of a cost in itself. And she starts with Death Warden if you're on a new save. Previously she had in the Footsteps of Death, so if you've already recruited her, that won't change. But the Blade Dancer's Medicae is now determined by weapon skill instead of intelligence. If their weapon skill is higher, the Blade Dance deals 5+ Medicae divided by 10% critical damage and can use Medikits as if had a Medicae skill, advancement feature, or corresponding feature or talent. Incredibly powerful, and that's why we stack Medicae with stuff like Mechanicus Respirator, the Diagnoser, or Voidborn's Pride. The first one I get is Dueling Mastery. The reason we build it into parry very hard on this build is because whilst you can take minuses to dodge, it does not affect your parry. Weapon skill, because that's going to be important to get first. Now, I like to go in Blood Rush. If you're very worried about your dodge going down, get Veil of Blades or Acrobatic Artistry first, but I play hyper-aggressive, so I get Blood Rush first. The Blade Dance targets a single enemy vowing to dispatch their mark. The Blade Dancer's next attack against their selected enemy cannot be dodged or parried. If this attack kills the target, the Blade Dancer regains 5+ 2 times toughness bonus wounds and gains 1 AP with an additional attack this turn. This ability can be used multiple times per turn, but it grants 1 AP and an additional attack only once per round. Incredibly powerful ability that you can use to generate MP. More Medicae at rank 6, more weapon skill, and then we take Blood Rush. Basically, the Blade Dancer uses an ability that costs wounds. They gain +3 MP on the current turn. So that does apply to Blood Oath, and with Skirmisher's Boot, sometimes you can get 6 or 7 MP when you use Blood Oath instead of getting just 3. We get Awareness, and we get Jinx. Whilst the Voidborn characters more than 50% wounds, all characters and all creatures, including enemies in 3-cell radius, have their effects increased by 10%. And if she is below 50%, decreased by 10%. What this will do is, along with her Voidborn initial ability, which allows her to have a 20% chance to successfully re-roll a failed like dodge, parry, or skill check, this increases that by 10%, but it also gives an extra 10% chance to use stuff like Skirmisher Boots. First of all, I take Death Waltz upgrade 3. What this does is it gives agility bonus damage to all damage, and it also gives you 4 charges of Death Waltz. Death Waltz in itself is incredibly powerful ability. The Blade Dance uses Death from above against an enemy without spending a charge. Immediately making a melee attack against the enemy, the Blade Dance repeats this combination up to 4 times. So this is 2 plus agility bonus divided by 3, so that's 8 attacks and 4 death from aboves here, whilst also giving 4 death from above charges and stacking agility to all damage. Pretty potent and nutty stuff. Going on after that, I then take Escape Artist. So whenever the Blade Dance dodges an attack made by an enemy who targets them for the first time in turn, Blade Dance gets 1 charge of death from above. If you've taken Veil of Blades, do consider taking Spinning Blades here instead, because you can build up additional attacks on Blade Dance. Then start building up agility. I get acrobatic artistry. The Blade Dancer immediately returns to the cell where they started their turn, and if you used death from above at all, you actually do death from above again, going backwards. So if their enemy's still surviving, you can go back and finish them off. I then pick up dance partners because I use 2. If not, again, have a look at spinning blades or sweeping motions. As long as the Blade Dancer has 2 swords equipped, the Blade Dancer's weapon skill is increased by agility bonus. I then take more agility and awareness. Then we move into character training perception. The reason that we want to start building perception is to counteract the negative effects of death from above, and it's also going to help with Act 3 Drukhari enemies. Very good to start getting the perception train going. I then take some athletics here. You don't need to take athletics. You could easily take demolitions, but it's stuff that's going to be covered by pretty much all companions. Rank 14, I go into more perception. You could go into toughness, because toughness will still help yourself heal even going into Executioner. I also grab guillotine, so death from above deals double damage to enemies that have less than 50% wounds, so that's very, very good with obviously acrobatic archery. And the final upgrade that we get into the first tier is until the end of combat, strikes made by the Blade Dancer, including attacks made part of Death Waltz, reduce the enemy's weapon skill by 2 plus agility bonus divided by 2, and decrease the enemy's armor and dodge by 2 plus agility bonus divided by 2%. These penalties stack. Yeah, you become a better armor stripper than operative, and that will complete your tier 1. For tier 2, going into Executioner. So this has 3 starting abilities. The first one is Force Repentance. When the Executioner inflicts a damage over time effect on a target that's already suffering from an effect of the same type, that means stacking the same dot, target must make a relevant resistance test required to remove the effect, with a penalty equal to the Executioner's Medicaid divided by 10. If failed, the target immediately suffers an additional instance of damage over time initial effect. All damage over time effects of this type on the target, including the one just inflicted and the ones that will be possibly inflicted later, have their level increased by Medicaid divided by 15. This bonus stacks. So this means that you need higher Medicaid for enemies not to pass resistances about getting it stacked. The other one is Scourging Strikes. The Executioner's melee attacks inflict per bonus plus strength bonus levels of bleeding on all targets hit. Previously that was 2 times strength, so this means it's going to be a little bit better for, well, no one actually, because if you're going in melee, you're going to be in melee anyway. So 2 times strength was fine, but strength and per, whatever. It's actually better for Blade Dance, because obviously you level per early, not strength. This effect is applied after all other effects from the attack are applied. The third part is where it hurts. If the target of the Executioner's next successful attack is suffering from any damage over time effects, for each effect, it must make the relevant resistance test required to remove it, with the penalty equal to the Executioner's Medicaid divided by 10. If failed, the target immediately suffers 3 instances of damage from that effect, 2 if it's a burst or area attack, so that means like Blade Dance. This damage is dealt after all other effects from the attack are applied. The damage over time effect is removed from the target. Till the end of the round, the target cannot be affected by the damage over time effects of the same type. This ability is applied instead of Scourging Strikes and removes all stacks of Force Repentance. This is technically the way that it works with those checks, is how Executioner got nerfed along with the Carnival of Misery rework. First ability I take is Pain Resonance. This gives you sort of an AoE extra proc for damage over time, so all enemies suffering from damage over time effects in the 4-cell radius of the Executioner immediately suffer an extra instance of damage over time from the effect. They must also pass resistant tests with a minus 34 penalty, which is based on Medicaid divided by 5, or suffer an additional negative effect. The effect and type of other resistance tests depending on the initial damage over time effect. Bleeding is agility, burning is willpower, and toughness is for toxin. Then we take Anatomy Expert. This is pretty big. The max number of wounds for Executioner depends on Medicaid instead of toughness. This makes toughness a dump stat, though you can still use toughness for health regen, and Kibellah especially gets a lot of items to buff her toughness. Carnival of Misery got reworked. The Executioner makes an attack with their primary weapon. On hit, the target suffers weapon damage, and if is affected by any damage over time effects, immediately suffers 4 additional instances of damage from those effects. this does not affect the duration of those effects. So it's basically a upgraded version to where it hurts now instead. You get an AP increase, then weapon skill rank 5, more weapon skill, and then we take Invigorating Screams. I've put a note on the sheet because you can take Master of Torture here instead, or you can even take Does It Hurt if you don't want to get this. But whenever an enemy in a 4-cell radius around the Executioner suffers damage from damage over time effect, the Executioner regains toughness bonus divided by 2. So this means every instance of dots. So if you hit and apply 3 dots, you'll get 3 times your toughness bonus divided by 2 healing. So if you use stuff like Iron Arm to buff your toughness, or any of Kibellah's items that buff her toughness, because you can get plus 15 from an armor and plus 10 to 15 from net cost slots, you can heal a lot more. And because every hit of Blade Dance will do it, every hit of Blade Dance and dots being applied will actually give healing too. Next, I take Reckless Abandon. The Executioner places up to 75, so 30% of their max wounds, with the same number of temporary wounds until the end of combat. The Executioner has temporary wounds. All of their melee attacks damage over time effects deal an additional plus 75% damage. So basically it turns temp wounds into extra percentage damage. Very strong with Malpayne Shroud and Invigorating Resolve. Then we get Does It Hurt? So all damage over time effects inflicted by the Executioner gain 20% critical hit chance. This chance is increased by all bonuses critical hit chance. Then Lord Xenos, we need that to get Drukhari weapon efficiency as well as some agility in here. Then we get Master of Torture. The Executioner deals 5% more damage to a target for each damage over time effect inflicted on them. More agility, more Medicate. Then we get Carnival of Misery upgrade 3. Until the end of combat, all damage dealt by enemies by the Executioner's damage over time effects is increased by 100% after all other modifiers have been applied. Before Carnival of Misery also did a ×2, but this is just an extra 100%. Then I take Deaths in the Air. This is a new one for what I normally put on here, but whenever the enemy suffering from toxin inflicted by the Executioner dies, all enemies in 2-cell radius around that suffer 4 levels of toxin, which is based on int bonus. Your int's not very high, but it can get up with buffs. But again, that initial layer of int means that you're applying the toxin damage more quickly on your next attack. Then take some Perception and Medicate. Then we get an Exsanguination, which is a very good one. The Executioner immediately inflicts bleeding 5 on an ally of their choice, including themselves. That ally gains 22% bonus to dodge and 3 additional MP until the bleeding ends for any reason. And that's 5 plus Medicate divided by 10. So it's a good way to buff your dodge and get some movement. We then take Finesse. Finesse is a huge upgrade in 1.5. When this character uses Drukhari or Aldari melee weapons, weapon damage is calculated using their agility instead of strength if agility is greater. Fantastic. Then Fragile Playthings. This is one of the 2 most important talents that we get. The first instance of damage over time dealt by the Executioner's damage over time effects in a round reduces the inflicted enemy's armor by 14%, which is 10 plus int bonus, until the end of combat. This effect can be inflicted on multiple enemies per round, but only once per enemy, and it stacks. The reason we take this after some more Perception and Demolition is for racking weakness. The damage dealt by the Executioner's damage over time effects is increased by 8% for every -10 penalty to armor suffered by the target from any source. This is Medicaid divided by 20. This can stack beyond the enemy's total armor, because even if they only have 20 armor, but you're minusing 1,000 armor for multiple stacks, it will do 100 instances of that 8. So that 100 instances will be 800% extra damage. This is how you stack some obscene damage, and Racking Weakness is definitely the best talent on here. We just need some things to prime it. We then get some Perception. It comes in a little bit late, but we finally get Dual Weapon Combat because we now have the AP for it. And last of all, we get Carnival of Misery Upgrade 1. As the Executioner uses Carnival of Misery, for any target that has suffered and will suffer damage from the Executioner's combat, both prior and after this ability to use, their armor does not reduce the damage dealt by damage over time effects. Now, you're probably never going to click Carnival of Misery over Death Waltz, but this is a very strong upgrade, and it will complete our tier 2. Starting in Exemplar, as I have said in all of these videos, you can either get Eager for Battle, which is +2 AP in the first round, or potentially you can take Destroyer first. And what Destroyer does is it will, every melee attack the character makes reduces the enemy's armor by 8% until the end of combat. This reduction is applied before damage is calculated, and it stacks. Obviously, this is going to be based on your strength bonus, so early on it's not as useful as it will be later on, but every source of armor reduction is going to stack up and be very good. Now, I get a different one that I normally do here, which is Sweeping Motions. The Blade Dancer's melee area attack costs 1 AP less, but no less than 1. The reason we take this is if you have 3 enemies in front of you, you can hit 3 people to apply dots for the same AP. Pretty nice. I take Medicate, and then I get Perfect Anatomy. The Executioner's armor is increased by maximum wounds divided by 20, which will also be increased by Medicate. So as you stack Medicate, more wounds, more armor. This really much helps in Act 3. More weapon skill. Then I pick up Dance of Blood, which is one of the first of our Death Cult abilities. Death Cult Assassin's allies deal 2+ agility bonus % more damage to enemies if both their ally and their target stand on blood-covered cells. And if you're using Kibellah's blood gloves, that is very useful. Next, I get Captive Audience. The Blade Dancer's next attack inflicts bleeding 16 on all targets hit. These targets must pass toughness resistant test of -26 or become immobilized for 1 round. All enemies mobilized by Captive Audience count as full cover. So the bleeding is going to be on agility plus weapon skill, and the test will be 10 plus 2 times agility bonus. More Medicate. Then we get Degraded Defense, which is the biggest damage increase in the game. Basically, every time you deal damage, it puts stacks onto the enemy, and that stacks divided by 6 is how much extra percentage damage you do. It used to be base damage, and it used to absolutely break the game. Now it's percentage damage, and it still absolutely breaks the game. We also pick up all-encompassing agony, which is if you have 3 dots on the enemies, you do 30% more damage over time for effects 2 of those enemies. And this is going to be around the time that you're fighting your mirrors, which is the Act 3 boss. So this is essentially your first build breakpoint here. So at the end of Act 2, the final encounter, you'll be level 36. Around level 21 is when you're going to want to be fighting some of the demon stuff, which is going to be on the Derelict Void ship. So these are sort of areas that you need to have good breakpoints. Obviously 15 for Aurora, 40 here, and then 50 for the boss of Act 4. So you always want to keep that in mind when you're making builds. We get weapon skill. Unfortunately, Grand Performance comes in at the next level, which is targets affected by Captive Audience have their armor, dodge, and parry reduced by 10 plus agility bonus percentage until the end of combat. This penalty is doubled for targets failing the ability toughness resistance test. So more armor strip. Why is Blade Dancer Executioner better than Operative for armor strip? Get Terrifying Strikes, which isn't one that you really use, but there's not much else you can put here. The Executioner's next melee attack forces all enemies to run away from the Executioner in a straight line for up to 3 cells. During this movement, the target does not provoke attacks of opportunity and leaves a bloody trail on the ground, which remains until the end of combat. Movement through these bloodstained cells costs the Executioner 0 MP. Then get Agility and then Unbearable Presence. The targets of Terrifying Strikes now make a willpower resistant test at -26 penalty, which is going to be based on your strength bonus. If failed, they provide attacks or opportunities to the Executioner's allies during forced movement. That includes yourself, by the way. We then take Open the Veins. A creature with the Bloodblessed or Bloodstained effect gain +1 stack of this effect whenever bleeding, burning, or toxin is inflicted on it. So this is a way to build that up on enemies. We get Awareness, and then we pick up Destroyer or Eager for Battle, depending on which order you've done this in. We then get some AP increase. Rising Tempo is another really good upgrade, which is every time the Blade Dancer attacks, you do 5% extra damage, stacking up to 15%, which is pretty nice. We start getting some awareness because we've completed our checks that we're covering for the party. Duelist then comes in, so we do Blade Dancer 5+ the weapons skill bonus damage % against enemies armed with a melee. Pick up Deep Laceration when using Scourging Strikes. Executioner's melee's critical hits inflict 23 levels of bleeding, which is 2 times strength and perception on their targets instead of 15, which is just perception plus strength. We then get more perception, more awareness, and then we pick up some extermination, so we'll get +1 base damage for every attack we make. We grab Blade in his hands. Any Blade Dancer attacks made in with a sword do agility plus bonus damage, which is pretty nice. It's doubled if using a 2-handed sword. We then get Sickening Pain, which is whenever a single instance damage over time of the Executioner's effect, it deals damage equal to 10% more of the enemy's maximum wounds. They get 1 stack fatigue, which lowers their strength, toughness, and agility and their MP. Lowering their toughness lowers their maximum health. Then get Bloody Requiem. Whenever the Blade Dancer kills an enemy, the Blade Dancer resolve increased by 1. Very good if using Blade Dancer's Mantle. We then get Wound Streaming Blood. A creature with the Bloodblessed or Bloodstained effect gains 1 stack of this effect each time it suffers damage from a bleeding, burning, or toxin. Then get Gift of Torment, which is until the start of their turn, the Executioner gains bonuses for parameters for each creature, enemy, or ally in the combat suffering for any damage over time effects. Much better with the old Carnival of Misery, but not so much with this one, which is you get toughness divided by 2 bonus armor per creature, bleeding per burning, you get that same dodge, and toxin gets 1 deflection per creature up to a maximum of tough bonus. So yes, building up your tough bonus before using Gift Torment is very strong. Then at rank 19, pick up Peak Condition, which will give us, we have very high health, but it will turn that into strength, which is going to boost a lot of our armor strip, and obviously Race Against Death, which is the Blade Dancer's maximum wounds are increased by their dodge. So as we get buffs, we can get a shit ton of health. And that will complete our tier 3. At the start of the video, I did cover a lot of the itemization, but some other key items to be worth talking about here is another option for the Helm, Lingering Whisper, to get some more damage to enemies below certain health thresholds. As I already said, Invigorating Resolve and Malpain Shroud are very good cape and swaps for the Anatomist Amulet in the next slot. Kibellah at the moment, like I said, Metal Claw Gloves for Armor Strip. Augmented Gloves is also very useful. But one of the very good ones that I actually do run for most of the game is the Crimson Oblivion, which is the Death Cult Assassin ability, which is how you get some of those bloodstain effects going. And it is quite useful, and you'll probably be using the Mechanicus Mask before then. You're going to want your best Toxin Swords in your main set, and you can have a two-hander in the second set or some more blades of your mirrors. So, looking at alternatives for the end of the build, I don't see many options where you could change things too much because I'm very happy with this build. But if there are some things you want to change, obviously Eager for Battle and Destroyer I've marked that you can swap around here. Potentially you can drop Invigorating Screams and move Master of Torture up and move that down to wherever you want to get it, or just replace it entirely and move everything up. If you're worried about your parry, you can drop Blood Oath early to get Veil of Blades and Anticipation, but you will want your second ability to be Blood Oath and Blood Rush. But I'm very happy with getting Acrobatic Archery. You could take it the other way around, but you will notice the loss of MP. Overall, incredibly strong build. Again, I don't think Vital Points is working, which is why I recommend Peak Condition. As for options for the items, I have put them all in here, so do have a little look through those. If you don't want to do the Executioner build, then obviously we do have an Arc Militant build for her, though I've not built the Assassin build, because where Mirashi has been buffed, you can only really load out one Assassin, and whilst that's the case, I don't like building for two. However, I could always convert her old Assassin build if more people want it, but I just don't think it's worth using over the Arc Militant build or even the Executioner build. But that's all I've got for you. I've been your host, Rome619. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, do leave me a comment, do leave me a like, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.